Hi there, this is Ben with Primal Lab. I hope you guys are doing well, and I just wanted to welcome you to our class today. So today, something we're going to be talking about is something that's universal throughout all of our training, and so it's a good place to begin. And that is, a lot of what we're doing could fall under the category of what's called nature connection, or human nature connection is the phrase I like to use. And acknowledging that we are part of nature too, but first of all, what does connection even mean? This term is thrown around more and more these days, and I think it's important, when we're communicating to get clear about our definitions. And so I want to take a look at connection, and we're going to do some exercises today that basically help you connect to what connection is. So So at what point do you connect with something? Are you always connected? Are you ever not connected? Is connection a actual, action, or is it a mental space? What is it? What's going on there? So, one of the fundamental places that we start, and you might have seen in some of the other classes, is that with the assumption that everything is mystery, meaning everything can be known more. Nothing's completely knowable, so everything's more than it seems. And this goes with communication as well. You're always communicating more than what is said. Maybe that's your body language, or your, what we call your energy, or your personality, but or attitude. So, connection is a strange thing. It's like what we're talking about is a state a state of being that is universal. So by that, again, I mean it's constant. It may be essentially just the core truth of how things are. So let's go back to mystery. So everything is mystery, meaning, again, that everything is, it's not like everything's unknown to you, right? You know things, but there's, inside of including that, everything you know or think you know has so much more to it. If you spend any time studying something, you realize that everything is basically vastly infinite in complexity or in its depth, So an example I like to use for that is the example of a tree. So we have these things around us that we call trees, and I've been working with trees for a long time, 25 years or so, and climbing trees my whole life. And you would think that even a tree guy would know what a tree is. Strange thing is, the more I work with them, the more mysterious they are to me. Even today, I was just having a kind of a mental meltdown of how intelligent these things are, or how sophisticated they are, how evolved they are. So we call things trees. So you see the trees behind me. So maybe pick out one of those trees behind me, maybe over in that section there that's in the distance where you can see a stem. So what is a tree? And so we could go to the encyclopedia definition, Wikipedia definition of a tree, and it would be probably show you some image of a tree, stem, root, a tree growing out of the ground, basically, with branches and leaves and whatnot. Maybe the roots, but so even that picture, and it's going to be in some sort of a frame because it's a picture. Or in your mind, when you picture a tree, it's probably a tree. It might be a tree that you're familiar with, or just one that you can even just invent or remember. But the strange thing is, there's no such thing as just a tree. So I'm not talking about some sort of, that they're all an illusion. I'm just saying however you're used to connecting to a tree, or holding tree in your mind and connecting to that, the frame you're using to connect a tree is insufficient. So to give you a little bit of why, a little bit of description on that. So that one of those trees over there, if you were to have it just by itself, remove everything else, and there's just a tree, right? So there's the stem, the branches, and the leaves. That's the tree. Oh, but there's also the roots, of course. Can't see those. Those are below the ground, but we got to include those. But we know that that's an artificial picture, and that as soon as we had a tree like that, it would start to die immediately. It wouldn't work. You can't have just a bare naked tree. It needs to be in some sort of environment. So we're going to give it, so it's tree, stem, branches, and then below ground there's roots holding it up, but the roots are also connecting to soil. Okay, so we got soil, maybe there's some rocks in there and stuff, and the soil offers nutrients and minerals to the tree and whatnot, and stability. Okay, but stability, not just soil floating in this picture, it's got to be in the ground. So now we have it's someplace now, so it's in the ground, and the ground isn't just we know the Earth's not flat. Most of us know that, and so it's not like the ground just ends. It's a sphere, so it's really connected to the whole planet, which is a big jump. But anyway, forget about that. Even if you just had the ground, tree poking out, it's still not a tree. With just those things, a tree would die very quickly. It would start to wilt, because where's the water? Maybe there's some water in the ground, but where is it? It's seeping out of the ground, it's evaporating. So where is the water? The water has to be coming from maybe dew, maybe rain, maybe through the water table. Maybe it's being watered, right, by the system. So we have to include water in this tree, so because trees are made up of water, and water doesn't just come out of nowhere. So we have now kind of this earth, water, tree system, right? But that's not enough, because we're still missing a big part of the system is the air and the carbon dioxide that the tree uses, and the oxygen that it gives off. So there's this exchange, this breathing that it's doing every day, right? As part of its nutrient cycle. Okay, so we need the atmosphere, and we need enough atmosphere to feed the tree, not get stuck. Can't just do this in some sort of box, or some sort of room or warehouse. We have to pipe, new stuff in. And, well, crap, that's not enough. Even as I said that, warehouse, what is it in just a dark warehouse somewhere? Well, we could have artificial lighting, but that's, okay, maybe we can contain it with artificial lighting, but that's just representing the sun, right? So maybe we can use artificial lighting and keep the tree alive for a while, but even that lighting is not coming out of nowhere. There's a whole electrical system that is supporting that, and the grid that's attached to, and all of the infrastructure that goes into the electrical system. Do you see? So maybe it's not in a warehouse. Let's leave it outside again. So it's in the ground, and now it's being supported by the sun. So we have sun, earth, water, air. The sun, though, is a long ways away. It's 93 million miles away. And so the system that we're referring to as tree has just grown to this gigantic scale of sun, earth, planet, solar system, and then where's the sun come from? Where did it start, and where is its energy going? What's that whole story? So there's no way to isolate a tree. A tree ends up being a system, a network of systems and processes that are obeying the principles of nature, that through that interaction, what we call a tree is a pattern that shows up. It looks like a pretty steady system. These trees behind me, if I go walk over there, I know them pretty well. They've looked that way for quite some time. Once in a while I'll notice a change, like springtime, like right now when we come out. Week by week, there's been really dramatic changes. It's so funny now, my perception has a hard time remembering what they look like just like 3 or 4 weeks ago and had little tiny new growth, little baby green leaves coming out, right? So, so there's another way that a tree isn't just a static thing either. It's a process of growth. It's this whole growth cycle. It goes from seed to sprout to seedling to this like small twiggy thing to eventually these giant things that eventually just fall over or collapse or rot and die and become soil and future generation trees, So what the heck is a tree? When you look at it from a primal perspective, when we look at it in terms of process and in terms of principle and pattern, they get really amazing. So everything is this way. Everything is this, this connected. And that's just there's nothing woo-woo about this. This is just really just an ecological or scientific perspective. I forgot to mention, by the way, that most trees grow in an ecosystem. Look at behind me. These trees are all interacting and using each other for strategizing with shade and nutrients and wind, and even a complex form of communication through the mycorrhizae underground. So everything is this way. Everything is more than it seems. And so when we say connection, one of the assumptions back to mystery is that one of the assumptions we use in this training is that everything's mysterious, and out of mystery, the first thing that we encounter when something reveals itself out of mystery, one of its first attributes that we can notice is that it's one. Is that the fundamental nature of everything that is known is connected, is unified, is whole, right? So, so that basic state, or that naturally occurring state of existence that everything around me right now is participating as one in some way, and in ways that are so complex and networked and developed over time and cyclical that they're really hard to keep track of, and our modern reductionist perspective can't keep track of it. This is not something that you can analyze and understand. There's aspects of it that we can, but as a whole, we have to look at it from a whole other perspective, from a holistic perspective, a systems perspective, and a network, nonlinear perspective, and we start to see patterns in that way, and our minds are really adapted to that. So that's another powerful thing. So to perceive connection, it requires I want to say part of your brain, but it might be we kind of say it like that. It's a way of thinking, though, that is doesn't necessarily look for boundaries. It looks for connection, and it looks for relationships, and it sees patterns. This happens to be more the right brain side of your brain, but it's a way of thinking, and it's vastly different than the just purely analytical, reductionist, boundary-seeking part of your brain, which is, both of them as a whole, because they are connected, work in unity, in harmony together to give us a seamless reality, So anyway, the nature of connection. Connection is fundamental, and what we do, this is the short version, this is something I go over in our journey program, and it takes quite some time to really get across, but what we end up doing is creating boundaries within the state of connection or wholeness that everything is, and those boundaries give us identities and give us things that we can, kind of categories and labels of things, so that we're able to communicate and basically hold things in our mind and really perceive the way we do. Okay, so when you're in just a raw when you're raw, encountering connection and oneness directly, it's very hard to make distinctions, and it takes some work and some training, and that's actually one of the kind of long-term results or things that happens through this kind of training is you're able to perceive both wholeness and separation at the same time, and use them both as they are needed, and extremely powerful. So I'm going to give you a couple exercises. The first one, to encounter connection and encounter both of these aspects of yourself. The first exercise is going to be to go to your sit spot, but before, don't just run in there. I need you to go out there a little bit slower, quite a bit slower than you have been or you have yet. So, and I want you to go towards it with an open mind and with a relaxed body and without too much expectation, and really slowly. So you're basically going to stalk your sit spot. So now you remember, if hopefully you've been through the section where we go over sense meditation and go over specifically wide angle vision. And wide angle vision, if you haven't seen it, is a way of, it's basically your peripheral vision, like when I can see my fingers out here, but I'm looking straight ahead, right? And then I can see my hands tunnel in on them. But when I go into what we call wide angle vision from Tom Brown Jr., we see, not only do we see the whole picture, but we start to actually see in a different way, and it opens up our brains in a unique way, and gives us a little more access to our right brain and to pattern recognition, and a little bit more insight and creativity versus kind of what we know. So we're able to see things differently. So if you go into extreme wide angle vision and you look straight ahead, like I'm looking straight ahead of this tree here, it's easier for me to let that tree kind of blend and fuse into the rest of the landscape, and with that, the way I hold it in my mind, my perception of that tree kind of softens and is able to go into a more whole state where I'm not intentionally kind of deleting so I can focus on tree, the rest of the environment. I'm actually not choosing anything in particular, right? I see tree in the center of my vision, but it's really just a pattern that blends with other patterns and all of that, right? So you want to kind of get into that state. It's a relaxed, open state. And then you're going to slowly approach your sit spot. And as you approach it, I want you to notice with your body wisdom, an internal, it's going to be a feeling. It's not really going to have to make sense, or it's not going to be you won't know this. You won't know that you know this. But it's going to be like a feeling that you have crossed some sort of a line or a boundary. And I want you to pause when you approach that. Just like you would pause when you approach someone's door. You slow down a little bit, or before you walk into a room full of people, or maybe before you approach a person, that same kind of feeling of like a sensing of space, And the boundary that you are sensing is the boundary of your sit area. You're looking for that line, okay? So it may have to do with the natural boundaries around you. You can see this line right here in my field. That's a natural transition area where I've been mowing, and so it's a place that your eyes catch. But it may not be that. It may not be anything in particular. It might just be a sense of something shifts, the space changes, and you're in a different place. So notice that, and then go ahead and have a sit. And with your eyes in that same kind of sense meditation, looking around, just notice where you feel like the size or the shape or the boundary of your sit spot is. Like if you were to walk out of it, you would pause at that threshold, and if you took one more step, you'd be outside of your sit area, okay? So that's the kind of sensitivity I want you to notice. So that's the first exercise. The second one, both of these take a little time, so you may have to do that first one kind of a few times. The second one, you're going to pick a tree, and hopefully you have a tree available in some quiet, somewhere where you won't be disturbed. This would be best done in a little bit more of a wild or isolated environment, some place that you won't be distracted or disturbed. So it could be a flower, by the way, but something big like a tree is really ideal for this, or a big shrub, some big plant. Okay, and you're gonna get back to where, without trying, in your wide angle vision, you can see the whole thing. Like you can see top to bottom, you can see some sky over it, some ground beneath it, you can see the whole thing. You're way back. Okay, so you might be 50 yards back, you might be less than that, but it depends on how big the tree is. And again, you're going to go for a gentle walk, and this walk is going to be incrementally slower as you go. So as you approach this tree, when you get halfway to this tree, basically you're going to be going about half as fast as you were. Okay, and pay attention as you approach it. The question, I call this exercise to touch a tree, and the question is really for you is, at what point are you touching the tree? When did you touch the tree? Okay, and so as you approach the tree, you're going to pause regularly when you feel kind of a pause. And I don't know how to explain that yet. We haven't been in this very long, but you will start to develop this skill of pausing it, and each pause you're going to go back into wide angle vision and sense and feel inside and relax and be open, and then you're going to keep walking towards this tree. And I want you to let go of everything you think you know about trees, or that tree, or expectations, or how long this is taking, or any of that. This should after I say that, this should take quite some time. This might take a half an hour or even an hour if you really want to go for it. And basically you're going to go slower and slower and slower as you reach the tree. By the time you get, from me to the camera close, you're going to be moving very slow, like imperceptibly slow. And your last few inches are going to be just this gentle touch, so slow that you might not even notice that you've touched it yet. When you finally do, when you make contact, it might kind of surprise you that you've actually physically touch the tree, right? And you're going for the bark, the trunk, not a tree you can walk under. Okay, so that's it. You're just going to do this gradually, incrementally slower walk as you approach the tree, and as you get there, you're going to reach out and you're going to touch the bark, and you're going to do this very slowly and stay in contact, there's that word, with the tree for a while, physically. Touch it, and when you feel ready, you're just going to come back, and you're going to go to your journal and write down a little story about what happened for you. I've seen a lot of different experiences and results from this exercise. Some have been highly transformative and healing. I can't really explain it other than everything's mystery, but so that's the exercise. And so, if you want to give me some feedback on where you paused or what you noticed, and what is a tree, and when did you touch the tree, that would be awesome. So good luck with this one. Stay connected, and I'll talk to you next time. Keep going.